All right, let's dive into a real American classic, Eugene O'Neill's Desire Under the Elms. Now, this is a story of greed, lust, and family resentment that is so raw, it feels like it was literally clawed out of the earth. It all goes down on this lonely New England farm, and trust me, this isn't just some play, it's a searing, unforgettable tragedy.
And this one line, wow. This line from the family patriarch, Ephraim Cabot, pretty much tells you everything you need to know. We are not in a world of forgiveness or second chances here. This is a place built on a really harsh, unforgiving Puritan idea where life is just one big test and the land itself is as stubborn and as difficult as the god they worship.
You know, to really get the power of this play, you have to see it for what it is. It's basically a classic Greek tragedy, just plopped down on a New England farm. You have these characters who are driven by these huge, primal desires that they just can't control. And you can see from a mile away that they are on a collision course with fate. It feels completely inevitable, and you just know their own flaws are going to be their downfall.
So, before we even really meet the family, we have to talk about the place that made them who they are. Because in this story, the real conflict, it doesn't start with a person. Nope, it starts with the land itself.
So this Cabot farm, forget any cozy, idyllic country picture you might have in your head, O'Neill makes it feel like this oppressive force. It's surrounded by these menacing elm trees that are described as looming over the house like sensual women. It's kind of creepy. This is a place that was built by sheer, brutal will, and it demands that same kind of hardness from anyone who wants to own it.
And right here, this single piece of land sets up the whole conflict before a word is even spoken. On the one hand, you've got the 76-year-old tyrant Ephraim. To him, the farm is his masterpiece. It's a reflection of his own incredible strength. But for his sons, it's a prison. It's a monument to their misery and a constant, bitter reminder of their mother, who they're convinced was worked into an early grave on this very soil. Okay, so you've got this smoldering fire of resentment just sitting there, waiting. And then someone walks in and tosses a lit match right into the middle of it. And that match is Ephraim's new young wife, Abby. And boom, this is the moment the whole game changes. Ephraim comes back to the farm, and he brings with him a woman who is less than half his age. Her arrival immediately throws a new, powerful rival into the mix for the one thing everybody wants, the farm. Suddenly, the two smoldering desires of the play, lust for land and just plain lust, burst into flames.
Now, it's crucial to understand that Abby isn't just some simple villain. It's way more complicated. She's a desperate woman, running from a life of poverty. For her, this farm is the first real home she's ever had a shot at, and she is just as determined, just as hard as Ephraim. She takes one look around and immediately identifies the youngest son, Eben, as the biggest threat to her newfound security.
So, the battle lines are drawn over the land. But then, a whole new and frankly much more dangerous conflict starts to brew between Abby and Eben, one that's rooted in this weird, forbidden attraction.
And you can feel the shift right here. What starts out as this mutual hatred, because they're rivals, it starts to change into this dangerous fascination. They're both incredibly lonely, they both despise Ephraim, and they both feel completely trapped by this farm. All that shared misery starts to curdle into this transgressive desire for each other.
So where does their affair finally happen? Oh, only in the most symbolic place in the entire house, his mother's parlor. This is a room Ephraim has kept locked up like a tomb. For Eben, sleeping with Abby in that room, it's the ultimate power move. He's symbolically conquering his father, he's reclaiming his mother's spirit, and he's taking ownership of both the woman and the land, all in one go.
And from this union, they hatch a plan, a really twisted pact. They're going to have a child. For Abby, a son guarantees she inherits the farm. It's security. But for Eben, the motivation is just pure ice-cold revenge. He's going to trick his father into raising and loving a child who is secretly his own, making sure the Cabot legacy and the land passes right through him.
Okay, so you need to buckle up, because this twisted plan leads to one of the most shocking and frankly horrifying climaxes in the entire history of American theater. So a son is born, and Ephraim is absolutely ecstatic. He feels reborn. He's 76, and he thinks he's proven his vitality, secured his name for generations. He throws this huge party, he's dancing like a wild man, celebrating, all while being completely blissfully unaware of the terrible secret this child represents.
In the middle of all this celebration, Ephraim cruelly taunts Eben, telling him he has no claim to the farm anymore now that there's a new heir. Eben, feeling totally used and betrayed by Abby, just snaps. He turns on her, convinced her whole plan was always just about the land, and in his rage, he screams that he wishes the child had never been born. Abby, desperate to prove her love is real, takes his words literally. She commits an act so unthinkable, she murders their infant son.
So, after that horror, where do you even go? What can we possibly take away from a story that is so bleak and so powerful?
At first, Eben is horrified. Of course. He turns Abby into the sheriff, but then, in the quiet that follows, he has this terrible realization about how deep and twisted her love for him actually was. And in a final, shocking turn, he chooses to share the blame. As they are led away together, presumably to be hanged, they find this strange, awful peace. They're finally free from the desires that completely destroyed them.
So why are we still talking about this play today? Because it digs into the absolute darkest corners of what it means to be human. It shows how that American dream of owning a piece of land can just curdle into a complete nightmare. It pits raw passion against cold greed. And it explores this terrifying idea that love, in its most extreme form, can be just as destructive and brutal as hate.
Which leaves us with one last haunting question to chew on. Everyone in this story fought and betrayed and even killed for this one patch of stony ground. But with Ephraim left old and alone, and Eben and Abby led away to their deaths, the farm is still there. In the end, it seems like the land itself was the only real victor, possessing and outlasting every single person who so desperately wanted to own it.